Okay, the next type of click I'd like to teach you is a designed grid click. So this is where we're starting to deal with tempo changes and meter changes. This is the same sort of process that one would do if they were writing music for a movie or doing an album production, where you want the grid of your workspace to match whatever music you've got in front of you or whatever music is in your head. So I'm using a DAW called Cakewalk. This is on Windows and it is free. Cakewalk has been around for ages. I believe one of my first DAWs was Cakewalk. It was acquired recently by BandLab, and so there's some cross functionality there where you can bring in the tracks that you create in BandLab, as you could with any DAW, and be able to manipulate them and mix them and do all that wonderful stuff. So let's get started. We're going to open up a basic project. And I know this looks a little bit like flying a plane. There's lots of controls, lots of buttons to press. But we notice some similarities between this and BandLab. We have a tempo indicator up here. We have a meter indicator up here. And we have a counter. So that is our measure count and our beat count. Let's just see how that works. Let's turn on the metronome as it plays. This is turning it on and off for record and on and off for playback. You can see the measure counter up here and the beat counter and all these cycling numbers for the frames. Wonderful. So first things first, let's greet our players. So let's turn off the metronome. Let's arm this for record, and you can see my signal is coming in fresh and hot. Let's change it to a mono signal. I only want the left channel, so fantastic. And let's greet our players. We armed it for record. We are ready. Hi there, everybody. I hope you're ready to record today. So the click is going to begin in measure 0. That's going to be a measure of 4/4. And then we're in on measure 1. Are you ready? Here we go. Fantastic. So we have some audio to set our players at ease. And what I do is Cakewalk doesn't have negative measure numbers. So I say that, oh, measure 10 is now my measure 0. So I'm just taking the ones position of 10 and saying, oh, that's measure 0. Measure 11 is measure 1, measure 12 is measure 2, etc., etc. So that's a good way of doing it. Some DAWs have negative measure numbers, others don't. Cakewalk does not. So let's work within our limitations there. Fantastic. So we have tempo. Let's bring our playhead over here. We can either click and drag our playhead from its top, or we can click anywhere on this little margin up here and change. We can jump around with our playhead. Let's say right on measure 10. And we click over here to the tempo and we say, oh, actually, you know what? That's going to change it for the whole project. So let's just do that. Let's say 138. Fantastic. Our audio doesn't breach into measure 10, so that's fine. Fantastic. We're going to say measure 10 is 4/4. Our first measure, which is measure 11, is going to be another 4/4. And let's say in measure 12, our music demands that we move to a 3/4. So we click on that meter button and let's change it to a 3/4. Go OK. Now you saw that if I just click up here, it gives me the prompt for saying, oh, where do you want a meter change? I can say at measure 15, I want a 2/4 measure. And then at measure 17, I want a 5/4 measure. You could go through and do your entire project from this, and you don't have to move around the playhead. Fantastic. So we have a 4/4, two measures of 4/4, a measure of 3/4, another measure of 3/4, another measure of 3/4, and then two 2/4 measures, and then 5/4. Fantastic. Let's talk about tempo. We can change it for the whole project here, but I like to go over into our views and pull up our tempo view. That brings up a graph. You can see that the y-axis is tempo and the x-axis is our measure count. So let's say, okay, measure 0 is steady, measure 1 is steady. From measure 2, let's start a very, very sharp accelerando, extremely sharp accelerando. Look at that curve. Let's see what that does. Oh, let's turn on the click for playback. Here we go. Fantastic. So that brings us up a tempo curve and back down. We can draw whatever we like. We click and drag and we draw whatever tempo comes to our brains. And you can see that all those tempo changes are reflected over here in our tempo list. Fantastic. So most of those are garbage. Let's get rid of them. We click on the first of the one that we want to delete, shift and click on the last, and we go delete. That takes away everything. Now let's do a single tempo change. Let's say on measure 2, we're going to go up to 160. I go click, and that wasn't exactly 160. So let's go over here and edit it. We double click and we go 160. Wonderful. And you can see that we can actually specify by going insert new tempo. We can specify the measure and the beat that we want a new tempo to happen. So we can do a lot within here. Fantastic. We've got a tempo change going from 138 to 160, and we are golden. Okay, fantastic. So what do we need to do? We need to create an audible click that we can send out to our players. Remember, we want click to start happening in measure 10. So let's go over here, we right click, and we create an instrument, insert instrument. There are lots of built-in instruments in Cakewalk. You can add to it as well. Let's choose General MIDI and create. That brings us up here. We click on our first little piano and we change it to a rhythm. We want something nice and percussive. Play some notes on your keyboard. That works really well. And let's just pull this down. Remember to disarm things that you don't want recording and arm the things that you want recording. So figure out your two tones for your downbeat and your other beats, and let's do it. We go space to start and then R to record. Here we go. Okay, I think I did that all right. Even if I didn't, you can go Control Z and that undoes. You can go Control Y to redo something that you have undone. Let's double click. We humans are not as accurate as a clock. You can see that my timing is a little bit off. I'm not directly on the grid. So we want to select all this. Let's go up to the select tool. We draw a box around it and we press the Q key. That brings up Quantize. Quantizing is rounding up or rounding down to the nearest whatever. We're going to say that whatever is a quarter note. I also want to change the note durations. I want to stretch out those percussive notes so that they span an entire quarter note, just so we can see it a little bit easier. We go OK. Look at that. We have all these quarter notes. And I was so late for this quarter note, in fact, that it rounded to this next beat. So let's draw a little box, change our tool, and you see this is contextual. We can, when we put our mouse over different parts of this note blob, we can stretch it out. We can affect the start, the attack of it, and we can change its pitch. Wonderful. So what do we want to do? We want to change its position. Fantastic. And we want to change this guy's position too, because that is a downbeat sound that we want on a downbeat. Let's play this. And let's turn off this built-in metronome so we can hear our created metronome. Okay, you notice something. There was a missing beat, and it's because I neglected to pull this over. Let's grab this whole thing and pull it back. Wonderful. That should do it. Now, let's do something else. I also want to create a little, or hold on, we can just draw it. There we go. And there's something else wrong here. Boy, I really did it to myself here. And these guys. Okay. We pull it over. We get rid of this guy. Now we're good. I think that looks good. Okay, fantastic. And then we have a whole ton of 5/4 measures. Let's go back. Now, if this ever gets split up, if we record twice, say, then we might have two clips. What we would do is draw a box around them and right-click and go bounce to clip. That's going to join them all together, and that's something we want. Let's do the opposite and go over here. Let's put the playhead right on this measure. We click our clip and we press the S key. That's going to split this out from the rest. You see how now we have two clips. Let's pull this back so it's exactly where we want it to be. And we right click and we do something called groove clip looping. Now, when we pull this out, it's going to keep looping. Loop, 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 loop. Look at all those 5/4 beats. And it's nice and precise. Let's put it against our built-in metronome. Perfect. Awesome. We have a click, ladies and gentlemen. And this is something we can send out to everybody. So we have a greeting, we have a count-in of one measure, and we have a precise click that includes meter changes and tempo changes in very specific spots that hopefully reflect exactly your music, either in your head or in your hand or whatever. Fantastic. We go select all. We go export, and we're choosing, oh, look at that. You can export to BandLab. Audio file. Let's say our audio file is a WAV file, and let's say it's on the desktop, and we go magic click. And we save it. It mixes it down very quickly. And just hold on. Let's look at this. Where's my desktop? Magic click. There we are. Let's see. Hi there, everybody. I hope you're ready to record today. So the click is going to begin in measure 0. That's going to be a measure of 4/4, and then we're in on measure 1. Are you ready? Here we go. There you go. And we have our full WAV file, our audio file, that way, and we can send out to all our players. I sound like a bit of a doofus, but that's how you sound when you listen back to your own voice. Fantastic. So that I hope that gives you a good idea of how to create a designed grid click. This is incredibly useful stuff. You'll use it for practically all of your projects. Fantastic.